You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Son, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
The bell calls us together and to the living tradition we share, a tradition that draws from many sources. Our third source is wisdom from the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. Good morning. Welcome to Virtual Worship with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in White Plains, New York. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister here, coming to you from our sanctuary.
I'm Tracy Brenneman, the congregation's religious educator, coming to you from my home in Westchester County.
Good morning. I'm Adam Kent, CUUC music director here in Manhattan. All of us are on land that was once Lenape.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which affirms 5 commitments: LFJIH, learning, freedom, justice, institution building, and hope.
1, learning. Revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism.
2, freedom. All relations must rest on free consent. Because coercions may be subtle, the work of detecting and removing them is ongoing.
3, justice. We are morally obligated to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. Hence, the voices of prophets are central and indispensable.
4, institution building. We cannot become whole nor advance learning, freedom, and justice without good institutions.
And 5, hope. Things could get better. There's no guarantee they will, but through our efforts, they really might.
So, thank you for being here. It is good to be together. Our shared light is a beacon of hope.
Today is the 10th Sunday of winter. As the days lengthen, the sun is in the sky today, 2 minutes, 41 seconds longer than yesterday. And the snow moon was full Friday night and is now waning gibbous.
On the Christian calendar, it's the second Sunday in Lent, 5 weeks until Easter.
Welcome to our members and friends, and a special welcome to our visitors. If you're a first-time visitor, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You'll find a link to the order of service on our website at cuucwp.org. There you will also find resources to help keep us connected during this time and a donate button. For February, our Share the Plate funds go to the Westchester Martin Luther King Jr. Institute for Nonviolence. We're able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, the plate share, and the minister's discretionary fund.
Board Chair Joe Majak will lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of the board of this congregation, I welcome you. Did you know that Amy Nathan's new book, Together, was just added to the UUA bookstore last week? Amy's work describes how, a century after the Supreme Court's infamous separate but equal decision, descendants of Plessy and Ferguson form an inspiring partnership. To add icing on the cake, Amy got a phone call this week from a high school classmate from Baltimore. She called Amy to share the news that her congregation in rural PA is launching a racial justice study group. And the first book they selected to study is, you guessed it, Together. CUUC supported Amy's goal of adding together to the UUA bookstore. We did so by creating a CUUC book review team consisting of 3 volunteers. Their role was to review the book and evaluate it for inclusion in the UUA bookstore. The team's recommendation was a unanimous yes. A recommendation from a UU congregation is a requirement for common read candidates and is strongly recommended for including a book in the UUA bookstore. Great leadership from Amy and a solid supporting effort by CUUC and its brand new book review team. Congrats, Amy. Now it's time to light our chalice. On the 10th Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the third source of the living tradition we share, wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do.
This church in Sesamin, Poland, 90 kilometers north of Krakow, is where in 1556 Peter Genesius issued Poland's first challenge to Trinitarianism. 23 years later, in 1579, Fausto Sozzini moved to Poland. He investigated the churches in the area, and he liked the anti-Trinitarian Minor Reformed Church best. They were the most liberal game in town. They weren't all that liberal, though, then. They required that he be baptized as a condition of membership, so he never joined. He offered to be baptized on the condition that he could state publicly that he believed baptism unnecessary and that he was participating simply for the sake of closer fellowship. His proposal was rejected, and repeated attempts to persuade him to change his mind all failed. He worshipped with them, participated in their discussions, lent his administrative skills to the development of their organization, taught their students, trained their church leaders, defended them in correspondence and public debates. But he never actually joined. When Sozzini first arrived, the minor church at that time was in a state of disarray, with neither leadership nor doctrinal agreement. Perhaps 40 congregations existed of varying sizes, composition, and emphases. Some were little more than chaplaincies on the estates of nobles. A few were sizable congregations in the larger towns and cities. In his writing and his public speaking, Sozzini brought a coherence to the fledgling movement. We can admire 2 things about that church. It was tolerant for its time, and under Sozzini's influence it came increasingly to emphasize Jesus' life rather than his death as the model which can save us. This led to an emphasis on social action, social compassion, and pacifism.
The Catalonian folk tune quoted by the composer Federico Monpou in the piece I'm about to play for you cautions those who would seek happiness in love. The refrain says, "Those who have love scorn it, those who have it not crave it."
I share with you this morning a sonnet by the 14th century Italian scholar and poet Petrarch. I saw angelic virtue on earth and heavenly beauty on terrestrial soil. So I am sad and joyful at the memory, and what I see seems dream, shadows, smoke, and I saw two lovely eyes that wept, that made the sun 1,000 times jealous, and I heard words emerge from sighs that made the mountains move and halted rivers, love, judgment, pity, worth, and grief, made a sweeter chorus of weeping than any other heard beneath the moon, and heaven, so intent upon the harmony, no leaf was seen to move on the boughs, so filled with sweetness were the wind and air. Words of invocation from Filipino LGBTQ Unitarian Universalist Minister Reverend Teresa Gustillo Gallardo. Let us reach the place of self, the place that is not alien to truth. Let us wash over with peace and serenity, with fierce longing for light and heart, with living strength flowing in our veins, bring ourselves into fearlessness and into trust. Now let us affirm together the aspiration from We Would Be One. I invite you to sing along with the Unitarian Universalists of Santa Monica.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. A few minutes ago, Reverend Meredith read for us a sonnet by the Italian poet Petrarch. Franz Liszt, 19th century composer, was inspired to write a beautiful piano piece by that sonnet, and we're about to hear it performed by my wonderfully gifted student and CUUC member, Wesley Miller. I think the sonnet is a great illustration of the stases in the natural world caused by a state of unrequited love.
Everybody, everywhere, seeks happiness. It's true. But finding it and keeping it seems difficult to do. Difficult because we think that happiness is found only in the places where wealth and fame abound. And so we go on searching in palaces of pleasure, seeking recognition and monetary treasure, unaware that happiness is just a state of mind within the reach of everyone who takes time to be kind. For in making others happy, we will be happy too. For the happiness you give away returns to shine on you.
Happiness is something if you give it away, you give it away, you give it away. Happiness is something if you give it away, then it comes right back to you. Oh, it's just like a magic penny. Hold on tight and you won't get any. Lend it, spend it, give it away, then it comes right back to you. A hug is something if you give it away, you give it away, you give it away. A hug is something if you give it away, then it comes right back to you. Oh, it's just like a magic penny. Hold on tight and you won't get any. Lend it, spend it, give it away, then it comes right back to you. Love is something if you give it away, you give it away, you give it away. Love is something if you give it away, then it comes right back to you. Oh, it's just like a magic penny. Hold on tight and you won't get any. Lend it, spend it, give it away, then it comes right back to you. Then it comes right back to you. Then it comes right back to you.
Let us, in a mood of prayer, remember. We come from the universe that began 14 billion years ago, the planet Earth that formed 4.5 billion years ago, life that began 3 billion years ago, eukaryotes that first appeared 1.5 billion years ago, vertebrates that first appeared over 500 million years ago. We come from the rise of mammals enabled by the fifth great extinction 65 million years ago, the order primates that first appeared 55 million years ago, the family hominid that first appeared 15 million years ago, the genus Homo 2 million years ago, the species sapiens that's been around 250,000 years, that wandered out of Africa 50,000 years ago, transitioned from hunter-gatherers to agriculture and settlement starting 12,000 years ago, that began a thing called civilization, cities, labor, specialization, imposing buildings, trained armies, and the rudiments of a civil service 5,000 years ago. All that we are, all that our kind have been and have built upon this land is but a flash in the pan. Let us then be humble and make of this flashing moment an expression of care. We may not have tomorrow, so let us live today in and from love. Let us live in and from a love that holds everyone mourning the loss of a loved one, that holds all the hospital rooms in which someone is dying alone, that holds the weary nurses and doctors, that holds the isolation the pandemic brought down upon nursing homes, that holds children and parents navigating difficult new forms of schooling, that holds in appreciation and gratitude the laboratories of scientists as they learn more about viral and other diseases, that holds all who are anxiously waiting for their vaccination, that holds all who are too afraid to leave their homes, that holds all who do not have the choice to stay at home or a place to call home. Let us live in and from a love that holds the halls of government where politicians set policies that shape our world, that holds the prison cells where people are afraid, that holds the judges that issue sentences, that holds all who are held in detention centers, Let us live in and from a love that extends to homes where people cannot escape abuse, and to bedsides of children with nightmares, and to desks of furloughed workers, and to picket lines, and to empty storefronts. Let us live in and from a love that floods the places where hate, violence, and trauma grip human hearts. A love that holds the people of Myanmar who are trying to survive a military coup, and the people in Armenia where there are warnings of a potential military coup, and the people of the Central African Republic where at least 14 people have been killed amid clashes between armed groups and security forces. Let us live in and from a love that is as old as time and as present as the momentary flash that we are. And so for all that has been shared and spoken and all else that we are carrying in our hearts today, we observe a moment of silence.
Calling on you, hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling on you, hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine.
Much of Debussy's music is based on the pentatonic or 5-note scale. The scale contains both minor and major triads in a state of perfectly balanced equanimity between happiness and sorrow.
This winter, we are highlighting practices in the category of slogans that help. This week, enjoy humility. Humility doesn't mean low self-esteem or that you're a doormat or second class, nor does being humble mean tolerating mistreatment. Speak up and do what you can. Knowing that you are prepared to be assertive makes it easier to relax into the unguardedness of humility. Humility just means that you're stepping out of the rat race of self-glorification. You're not preoccupied with yourself. What a relief. Humility is like an open hand, empty of the weapons of superiority, scorn, or self-importance. People around you will feel less likely to be criticized and will be less likely to get defensive or competitive with you. The less you focus on being appreciated, the more appreciation you'll get. At the end of it all, we're each reduced to dust. Humility helps you be at peace with these facts. To enjoy humility is to enjoy how humility makes your day simpler, keeps you out of conflicts with others, and brings you peace. For Rick Hanson's tips on how to cultivate and enjoy humility, see the post at CUUC Matters. The link is in your eCommunitarian.
Always stay humble and kind.
I invite you now to sing along, please, with the Chancel Choir of First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Our hymn number 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden. I just want them to be happy. It's a sentiment commonly expressed by parents about their children. Just want them to be happy. But a life of meaning, a life that feels real, is more important than happiness. Parents who say they just want their child to be happy may be talking themselves into letting go of some expectation. Secretly, they were hoping the girl would go to medical school, or that the boy would become a teacher, or that their child would one day take over the family business. And when it becomes clear that's not going to happen, The parents coach themselves into accepting that alternative career paths are fine. I just want her to be happy, or him or Zir. If meaning is more important than happiness, then why don't parents say they want their child to have meaning? I'm not sure. Maybe they think meaning would convey that they're projecting their own assessment of what would constitute meaning, and happiness seems more objective or more like it's up to them. Or maybe the parents wish to spare the child the challenges of and some degree of unhappiness, the toil that may come with a life of meaning. Another way to say meaning is to say that we want to be of use. Marge Piercy expressed it well in her poem, To Be of Use. The people I love the best jump into the work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands and crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing, well done, has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums. But you know, they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry and a person for work that is real. End quote. It says something that we're more inclined to wish happiness for our children or maybe our partner than for ourselves. You'll hear, I just want them to be happy, more often than you'll hear, I just want to be happy. At some level, we understand that contributing to someone else's happiness is meaningful, that a life helping others be happy is a life of purpose, of being of use. But a life of just being happy somehow feels rather shallow. In the 1999 film The Matrix, Lawrence Fishburne offers Keanu Reeves the choice between a red pill and a blue pill. The red pill frees one from the machine-generated dream world and allows escape into the real world, but the truth of reality is harsher and more difficult. On the other hand, the blue pill represents a beautiful and pleasant life without want or fear within the simulated reality of the Matrix. We admire the one who chooses reality with all of its struggle and anguish over the one who chooses mere happiness. Nowadays, red pill and blue pill are political metaphors. Naturally, we all believe our own political opinions are the correct ones, otherwise they wouldn't be our opinion. But if our certainty grows rigid, if we lose the context of humility that recognizes that we could be wrong, that our opinions if we neglect to remember that our opinions were formed by the same sort of hodgepodge, higgledy-piggledy brain, deeply oriented by its built-in cognitive biases as every other person, then we begin to wonder how it is that other people can be so foolish or pig-headed as to disagree with us. And we fall into the trap of thinking we ourselves see reality while those others have taken the blue pill of ease and delusion. Of Of course, this trap is itself the blue pill. The most common blue pill there is the ease and delusion of thinking yourself to be among the few who have taken the red pill, that you see the truth while most other people are stuck in some dream world. What this reflects, though, is that we want the red pill. We want reality, truth, meaning, and we will choose the difficult challenges of meaning over a life that's comfortable but meaningless. Not always. There are times in every life, and in some lives more prevalently than others, when one is so worn down, tired, abused, oppressed, or in pain that one would gladly reach for a blue pill if one could. But by and large, most of us, most of the time, choose meaning over happiness, choose reality over withdrawal. Of course, discernment of reality is inherently skewed and distorted, so I might better say we choose engagement over withdrawal. For what we engage with is our provisional sense of reality. We choose to be present as much as we can be, over being absent. There is that in us which stirs and moves in resonance with John F. Kennedy's 1962 speech, in which he said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills." Whatever you might think of the moon mission and its impetus to display military might, we do yearn for work that is real, for undertakings that are hard enough to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. And yet, there is also that in us which is influenced by a culture obsessed with happiness. This idea that we should pursue happiness is in there in most of us. And you know, I don't think it's helpful. I'll come back to that, but let's take a break with some Schubert. Adam?
Here is Schubert's third moment musical, or musical moment, a composer in which happiness, when it appears, seems to be a mirage.
When Thomas Jefferson imbibed John Locke's 2 treatises of government and summarized Locke's philosophy in this country's foundational document, the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson made one crucial emendation. John Locke had said that people have inalienable rights, rights based in a foundation independent of the laws of any particular society. And Locke had listed these rights as life, liberty, and property. Jefferson's tweak was to say that all are endowed with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I appreciate Jefferson's impulse to dig a little deeper, to ask, what is property for anyway? And to point instead to the purpose of having any property at all, to facilitate the pursuit of happiness, which purpose one may well choose to pursue without property. But this pursuit of happiness idea has been interpreted as pursuit of instant gratification of desires, when what Jefferson had more in mind, we know from his letters, was limiting desires, cultivating friendships, and rejoicing in the moment. If Jefferson had said instead that governments are instituted among people to secure the rights to life, liberty, and the means to construct for themselves the meaningful life to which they are called, then he'd have avoided the implication that every unhappiness was a bad thing, that the purpose of life was to chase away every dissatisfaction. If instead of pursuit of happiness, he had spoken of the means to construct a meaningful life, then he'd have better said what his letters make clear he thought he was saying. After almost 20 years of starting up and leading Zen meditation groups in El Paso, Texas, Gainesville, Florida, and White Plains, New York, I have a pretty good idea of the range of reasons people come to meditation. And after a lifetime of being part of Unitarian Universalist congregations and 17 years as a UU minister, I have to say that people coming to congregational life seem to have a wider range of reasons, and any given person is likely to have a number of them. In Western society, Zen is the newfangled thing that appears to offer a fix that ordinary American churches and synagogues don't. Offer a fix. Most people that walk into a Zen center have an idea that something is wrong with them, and Zen might fix it. This talk they've heard about enlightenment sounds like just what they could use some of to straighten out what's wrong with their life. If their Zen teacher is any good, or if they just read around much in the Zen section of the bookstore, they will be instructed that the life we're already leading, this ordinary day-to-day life of ours, is not the problem, but somehow already the solution we're looking for. Still, curative fantasy dies hard. Fantasies of being cured and brought into some model of a perfect life tend to persist. A curative fantasy, explains Barry Magid, is a personal myth that we use to explain what we think is wrong with us and our lives, and what we imagine is going to make it all better. In this country, churches and synagogues have much deeper cultural roots than Zen centers, so there tends to be a little less impulse there to get fixed, a little more implicit understanding of congregational life as not something that makes you special or cured, but as simply a constituent of ordinary day-to-day life. While congregational life appears to be fading from the cultural scene, and increasing portions of what's left of it are dominated by megachurches purveying some curative fantasy of their own, our culture still retains a wonderful sense of congregational life as simply an ordinary part of an ordinary life, an arena for making meaning and engaging in work that is real. Make some friends, reflect a bit about values and meaning, not because it will make you better, but because that's how you be what you already are, Not that what you are ever is static. Congregations are for making connections, having a community, learning things together, and doing some things together to reduce the world's harshness. If Zen and meditation groups stick around for another couple generations, they will gradually move from the cultural space of that place to get something called enlightenment or bliss or inner peace, and move into the same cultural space that congregations have occupied when they aren't devoted to curative fantasies. One of the places where you play out the meaning of your life. Congregational life is an ordinary part of an ordinary life, all the while gradually aging out of the genius of our youth and into the sagacity of our maturity, and finally into the gentleness of our senescence. What could be more ordinary? Unhappiness is not a disease from which we are suffering and of which we need to be cured. Depression needs to be addressed, but simple unhappiness is just a part of the ebb and flow of ordinary life, a full life. It's a way of calling our attention to the next challenge to bite off. Meaninglessness needs to be addressed because we do need meaning in our lives a lot more than we need happiness. If your life has meaning, you can put up with a lot of unhappiness. If your life has meaning, then unhappiness can take the form of purpose and drive. Joyful creativity is urged on by an edge of dissatisfaction that pushes us forward. Where life has meaning, we may even speak of the joy of unhappiness, a kind of pleasant ongoing engagement with our very dissatisfaction. To enjoy the fun of problem solving or just problem addressing requires having problems that feel meaningful. So meaninglessness needs to be addressed, and isolation and alienation need to be addressed, for those are the cousins of meaninglessness. But you don't need to be happy all the time. If you are, fine, and if you're not, also fine. Happiness works better as something you look back and notice has been with you as you were living out a life of meaning, rather than something to chase after. There's a Zen verse that goes like this: caught in a self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. It's not the dream that's the problem. Humility should remind us that we don't know reality. Our perceptions are inherently distorted by the bias machine that is our brain. So in some sense, it is all a dream, but a self-centered dream only makes for suffering. The self-centered dream pushes against the world to wrest our desires from a world that seems intent on withholding them. Instead, the meaningful work works with the flow of the world instead of trying to paddle upstream. As Percy's poem described it, moving in a common rhythm, as when the food must come in or the fire be put out. We add our work to the current rather than against the current. Which leads me to another verse that isn't from the Zen tradition. It's a verse every one of you, I think, knows and has known since childhood. And it is this verse that I leave you with today. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. Blessed be and amen.
Please sing along with hymn 1074, Turn the World Around.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around.
We come from the mountain, living in the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living in the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are?
See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are?
Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who I am? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life a party walk. So is life. Oh, so is life a party walk. So is life. Water make the river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit. Only can the spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life a party walk. So is life. Whoa, so is life a party walk. So is life. Whoa, so is life a party walk. So is life. Whoa, so is life a party walk. So is life.
G. Be safe, be well. And now please join Joe Majak for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. We extinguish our chalice, yet ethical wisdom and spiritual awakening we draw from the world's religions goes with us and lights our path always.
The last words of the Buddha: be ye lamps unto yourselves. Be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp. Go in peace.
If you've got troubles, then I've got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am. Maybe I'm stronger too. Maybe, but none of them will ever lie.
borrow Debussy's Girl with the Flaxen Hair, who seems to live in a state of perpetual equanimity between sorrow and bliss.